Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of the Cinema Corner. I'm your host, Alec Friedman. As promised last week, I will be doing a Quentin Tarantino filmography ranking this week. I'm going to be seeing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood this Sunday, so I will not be including it in the rankings, but I will be reviewing it in next week's episode. I'm very excited to do this episode. I've been a big fan of his, really, since I first got into film. I think he's one of the most dynamic and exciting directors ever, and certainly one of the most exciting currently making films. I'm very excited for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I'm very excited to do this episode. So keep listening, and if any of you listeners move, I'll execute every last one of you. Okay, I did not have permission to use that song, so hopefully I don't get in any kind of copyright trouble. There's only like 15 of you, probably not even that much listening to this, so I think I'll be okay. But just in case, I guess I gotta say I don't own the rights to that song, but I'm using it anyway, so sorry to whoever owns the rights. I don't know, but let's get started. I will be issuing a spoiler warning here. Usually I don't talk about spoilers for when I review new releases, but I just feel like I'd be doing myself and you guys a disservice to talk about these movies while limiting myself to not be able to talk about specifics. So there will be spoilers of all of the films I'm talking about today. I'm going to be talking about specific details. So you've been warned. If you've seen them, great, keep listening. If you haven't and you don't want specific information given away, maybe go watch them and come back. But yes, I will be getting into spoilers here. So starting off the ranking, coming in last place is going to be Death Proof. I don't think this movie's particularly bad at all. I just didn't really love it so much. It's very niche. The performances are mostly pretty solid. I didn't care so much for most of the actors, but Kurt Russell really does a great job, and I'm a big fan of Kurt Russell. I think he's just awesome, and I love watching him in films. He's just really fantastic in this. From the moment we first meet his character, he's very mysterious and creepy, and you know something is wrong with him. His costume design is pretty good, too. The stuntman outfit is very weird. That scar on his face is sort of telling, and it's not really much of a surprise when he goes and does all the crazy killing stuff that he does, because you're waiting for something to happen in the first 30, 40 minutes of this film before he kind of takes action. And that's honestly one of my biggest problems here, and I get why they structured it the way they did, but I just hate that you have this whole 40 minutes with these three girls, and then they're killed, and that's it. That's done with their story, and then boom, we're just on to the other characters. It feels like very pointless to me, and a lot of the scenes of the girls, the first group, and then the second group just sitting and talking doesn't really resonate with me so much. I mean, it's kind of boring. The best scenes for me really were the action scenes. I love when Kurt Russell attacks the car driving at it the first time, and I especially love the chase scene at the end and then their retaliation to him. That was really fun to watch, especially when they beat him up at the end. That was really funny. But I don't really like this movie that much, though I do acknowledge that the cinematography and aesthetic created a really good. I thought it took place in the 70s, actually, until they first started using cell phones. They did a really good job making it feel like a 70s retro throwback. Honestly, just the story just doesn't really get me invested, though. As good as the cinematography is, as enjoyable as Kurt Russell is, as fun to look at as this movie is, I can't really get invested to it so much, but I do admire for what it was going for, and I think it's a solid film, but for me, out of all of Tarantino's films, it's definitely the worst. Coming in next at number 7 is The Hateful Eight. This is also sort of niche. I like this movie personally a lot more than I like Death Proof. There's some pretty good usage of the Ultra Panavision cameras, but overall throwing everyone in that tiny small environment sort of diminished the effect for me. The opening shots and everything that takes place before they get to the haberdashery is really, really beautiful to look at. The nice wide frame of the snow, and you really feel the isolation that they're encountering in this crazy storm. But I just feel like throwing them in that tiny environment just diminishes those effects. The cinematography is still good, though. The camera work is Tarantino. It's going to be great. That being said, I do think that there could have been more efforts to make the atmosphere feel more claustrophobic. I think there could have been maybe some more close-ups, or just maybe making the screen so wide and that close and tiny of a place, for me, diminishes the claustrophobic effects. Maybe for others, it elevates it, but personally, it didn't do all it could have for me. Story-wise, I think it kind of drags on a lot in the first half. Everything from the beginning to Sam Jackson's monologue towards the end of the first half is hit or miss for me. Some really good character stuff. Kurt Russell's performance is really good. But also at the same time, I think while there's good stuff that sets up character and setting, I think it's a little too much. And dare I say it, a little too self-indulgent. Sorry, Quentin. But it's a little too much for me. The story could be way more efficient and way more trimmed down. But everything from that monologue towards the end is pretty good. I think the resolution is good. I definitely like the reveal. Jennifer Jason Leigh gives a really, really good performance. I think the violence is really good here. It's as good as in any Tarantino movie. The blood and all that kind of stuff is very good. And honestly, the best part about this film is Ennio Morricone's Oscar-winning score. It's really fantastic. I've listened to it a lot over the years. I don't even watch the film that much, but I do listen to the score. It's very good, and it definitely elevates the film. Like I said, the performances are really good. They're very Tarantino-esque performances. Tim Roth is pretty enjoyable in this as well. But it does drag on somewhat in the first half, but overall it's very well made and it's an interesting setting. And I do enjoy it. I wish it was a little more efficient and well structured, but that being said, it's a good film and it's very much Quentin Tarantino doing what he loves, and you can't hate on it for that. Coming in at number 6, I think this is a big jump in quality for me from 7 to 6. This is definitely an elevation, but is Jackie Brown. I really hate to have this film so low on the list because I really do like it a lot, but just compared to the other 5 that come after it, I think it's just a little bit worse. But this is a really great film. The filmmaking on this is truly excellent. I love the transitions. That's one of my favorite parts of this film. They sort of blend together really well, and I love the way they kind of just like leave the faces onto the next scene and show the characters sort of thinking and processing what happened as the next thing is still going on at the same time. I think that was really clever. And the characters are really interesting and enjoyable to watch. I love just about everyone in this. Robert De Niro is really good. He's so weird and very funny in this film. Robert Foster is great. I think he's so perfectly casted as this character. I haven't seen him in too much. I think he's in Breaking Bad towards the end. He plays a very similar character as he does in this film. I won't spoil Breaking Bad for you if you haven't seen it, but it's one of the best shows of all time, and you definitely should have seen it at this point. But yeah, Robert Foster is great. I love his dynamic with Jackie and his ultimate resolution at the end where he chooses to stay instead of going. It's really good. He talks a lot about how he wants to get out of the bail bonds business, but then when he has the opportunity to, he's scared and he stays, and I think that was a really nice thing for his character. Sam Jackson is really good in this too. He's cool, but in a different way than he's cool in Pulp Fiction. He's really enjoyable to watch. He presents himself as very smart, though some of the stuff he does is not the brightest. He's definitely not the smartest, but he thinks he is. But he is kind of scary at times. He's very cool. Michael Keaton is pretty good at the cop here, too. You feel like he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder, and he knows that there's more going on than Jackie's leading on to him. But in the end, I guess he kind of falls for it. So, maybe she did play him. And overall, I do like the performances. And Pam Grier, obviously, is really great as Jackie Brown, too. She's super cool in this movie. That's one of the things about this film is a lot of the characters are just so cool. The way she talks and the way she acts and the way she knows exactly what she wants to do. She's very cool in this movie, and her energy is really infectious and it's fun to watch. There's good themes here too of aging and greed. My only main criticism with this film is sometimes a little plot heavy, and sometimes the usage of music, while the music is really good and enjoyable, can be a little overdone and obnoxious, but the songs are good and they are in some scenes used really well. In particular, I love the song that begins and ends the movie, the Across the 110th Street song. The music of it really fits the film, and the lyrics actually talk a lot about similar things and themes in the film, and it works really well. This is honestly just vintage Tarantino. It's super enjoyable, it's super well made, and I hate having it so low on the list, but it's just, that's how many good films he has. And yeah, I definitely love Jackie Brown. I think it's one of the more underrated and under-known Tarantino films, so if you haven't seen it, I 100% recommend checking it out. It's really, really good. Coming in at number 5 would be Django Unchained. The first time I saw this movie, I liked it. Over the years, I've kind of gone back and forth on my enjoyment of it, but this time in particular, I did happen to like it a lot. I find it very fun and very enjoyable. The acting all around is excellent. Leonardo DiCaprio is excellent. This is the best I think I've seen him in any movie. He plays a very charming but also vile plantation owner, and he like does that so well. Most movies I feel like he's just like Leo playing Leo, but his role here, he really like seeps into this character. His accent is very good, and he wears the personality of the character like very well. You hate him, but you can also see like his charm and why his people act the way they do with him. Christoph Waltz is good here. His personality is pretty good too, but I don't really love his character that much. King Schultz is pretty good, but I think he could be a little annoying at times in his ultimate decisions with his character. I'm not a huge fan of, but I'll talk more about that later in this review. Jamie Foxx is excellent here. He's exactly what this character should be. He's fun. He grows confident, and when the cool moments come, he really, really shines. He delivers those awesome one-liners and does those awesome action moments so perfectly. He really was perfectly casted for this role. But Sam Jackson undergoes like a good transformation too in this film. Like he really does seep into his character, and he's pretty despicable too. And I think Django mentions earlier in the film about like the head slave in the house is, you know, someone that's really despicable, and he does that so well. He's such an apologist to a slave owner, and, you know, he gets in the way of Django and Broomhilda, and it's pretty despicable, and he's such a jerk to Django, and Sam Jackson brings that energy and does it so well, because it really is a different role for him in a Tarantino movie. He's used to playing these really cool characters, and now he's sort of subservient, but in a way he is about himself, but he's also, you know, not a good person at all. He's mean to fellow slaves, and you'd think that he'd want his freedom, but he loves Calvin. But overall, I mean, he does play that despicable character really well. But really, for me, who steals the show is Kerry Washington. She is excellent in this film. She's really not given much to say, but she just does a fantastic job. Like, you could tell exactly what her character is feeling at all times just by her face and her body language. You really feel for the torment her character experiences. And like, she really just wears that emotion on her shoulder, and when she's feeling scared or tormented or happy or excited, like, you just get that, and she just does a phenomenal job. I think the narrative is pretty effective, but like I was saying earlier, my main flaw with it in this film is the ending. I think the whole not shaking hands thing, while I get why he wouldn't do it, but just to shoot him, it feels so forced. And I really do. I get why he doesn't like him, and they show the flashbacks of him with the dog, and he brings that up too. But it just, for him to shoot Calvin in that situation, he knows exactly how it's going to play out, and he did all of this stuff really just to make the deal, but he just won't shake the guy's hand, or even if he doesn't, he has to shoot him, and then it leads to that whole Australian miner scene, and I think that's so forced too, because I think once the action and the violence starts after that altercation, Django can just finish them all off there. They don't need to have him sent to the mining thing just to show it back. I mean, I guess it shows that he's like on top of things, and he's really aware and knows how to work the system now, but I really think it could have been much more streamlined and concentrated. But that being said, I do like the actual actions of Django shooting the people up in the house and taking it back and kissing his wife and riding off into the night with her on the horse. That was pretty cool. I particularly love when he shoots the sister and she goes flying into the next room. That was really funny. Like I said, it's just the violent effects are pretty good here. It's a really fun tone. While I don't know if the violent effects work as good as a Kill Bill, sometimes they're a little heavy-handed, especially in like these brutal or torturous slave scenes. In the Django attacking scenes, they work really well. And like I said, it's a fun movie to watch. It can also be very brutal and hard to watch, but when Jamie Foxx is on his game and he's spitting one-liners and shooting people, it's really fun to watch, and the performances are good. Overall, it's just a really great film that takes you through a very grounded and human view of slavery and just shows a really cool character rise above it. It's very fun to watch. Coming in next on the list, and these were probably the two hardest for me to differentiate in terms of this list. I went back and forth on which one I would have above, but I decided to put Reservoir Dogs here at number 4, and this is really just the one that started it all. It's really awesome and inventive for its time. I think some of the acting from Joe and Tim Roth's character in particular aren't really that good. I can't stand Tim Roth's American accent in this. I feel like it's just so bad. I think a lot of people disagree with that, actually, but for me, It doesn't sound good, and I don't really like his character that much, but he's fine, I guess. But the other performances, especially those from Chris Penn, Michael Madsen, and Harvey Keitel, and Steve Buscemi too, actually, are so good. Michael Madsen in this movie is so good. He's so enjoyable to watch. You have no idea what he's going to do. The guy is like crazy. The way they describe what he did at the robbery, what he does in the actual factory itself when he cuts the policeman's ear off with Stuck in the Middle playing. That scene is like, that was like the birth of Tarantino in that scene. It's so excellent. The first scene, too, sets the stage really well for the characters. It did a very clever way of just having the characters talk casually, and that sort of just gave you clues into how the characters act and what their allegiances are. And one of my favorite things about this that I think Tarantino sort of goes away with later in his films is that it's really, really concentrated and direct. It's super effective. It's structured really pretty well, and it doesn't really divulge too far off, and that's very anti-Tarantino-like. I think it's his shortest film in terms of runtime. And it really it doesn't waste any time. But that being said, it also doesn't quite reach the full potential of its premise. The resolution, to me at least, feels a little incomplete and unsatisfying at times, though. I do like the way the characters play out. I think there could have been more than just like having all the characters either dead or about to be arrested. But leading up to it, it's just really fun to watch. It's super enjoyable. It gave birth to Quentin Tarantino films, and it's really excellent. The cinematography is really good. The visual storytelling here is also really good. I know a lot of people know this now, but there's a lot of like subtle clues in the background about who's on what side based on the way the colors are proportioned. Like there's an orange bottle that it's facing off against the white and pink bottle in the background, and one of the scenes giving clues to Mr. Orange versus Mr. White and Mr. Pink, which is kind of clever and some really good storytelling from a visual standpoint. It's not the most well-polished of his films, but overall it's just really fun, enjoyable, and well-structured, and it's one of my all-time favorites for sure. It's probably the one I think I've rewatched the most over the years. Coming in at number 3 is going to be Kill Bill. Quentin Tarantino considers this to be one film, so I consider it to be one film then too. And this movie is just off the charts crazy. It's pure cinema at its finest. Everything here is amplified to the max, and it is just so much fun. This is Quentin Tarantino's vision, but everyone in this crew deserves so much credit. The fight choreographers, the sound mixers, the director of photography, the actors, everybody involved here just deserves so much credit, because this film is like so unique and so stylish, and it's probably was so difficult to craft and to make, and it's really such a job well done. Everything is just so effective and awesome in this movie. The style is seriously like, it's so insanely awesome. I know I keep using the word awesome, but it really is. So much of this movie is like so iconic. The whistle, the sirens, the action set pieces, the music, everything about this film is super iconic. The narrative is simple but effective, and you really get invested in Beatrix's journey on revenge. Every fight with a member of the Deadly Viper Assassins is completely different style-wise, which I love. You know, you don't feel like you're getting into the same action fight scene every single time. It's like a different kind of fight and a different kind of tension each time, and that's really clever and really fun to watch. It's refreshing. It's hard to say which my favorite fight is, but it probably has to be the one with O-Ren. It's just such a crazy scene when she has to defeat all the crazy 88s, and with the blood spattering, and then she fights her on the roof with the Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood, like disco song playing in the background. It fits so well, and it's just such an awesome moment. The switch back between color and black and white and color again, it's really, really good. I think of the two halves, I think Kill Bill Volume 2 is my favorite half. It's definitely more like character-driven and stripped down. The whole sequence of her getting buried, then showing the training with Pai Mei, and then busting out of the coffin using his training is just so awesome, too. I love moments like that, and it just works so well in this film. The music that gets like more impactful as she breaks her way out of the coffin, and then she finally reaches her hand through the coffin and comes out. It's so awesome. You're like, yes, she is just on a mission, and absolutely nothing will stop her. It's good exposition, too, to show a flashback like that instead of just having her break out. And you really learn like where she became this person that went from an innocent person who first showed up to Pai Mei's training and became like the vengeful character that she was by the film's end. My only flaw in the film, and this is really my only flaw, is it's not structured the best. The pacing is very off, which can take me out of it sometimes. But like, it doesn't really carry a momentum throughout. But each sequence just generates its own momentum that you sort of forget about it. But overall, it's like one continuous thing. It doesn't flow the best. But like I said, each sequence is so awesome that it kind of works its way out. But really, other than that, I don't really have any flaws with this film at all. It is so enjoyable. It is so much fun to watch. I think it's great. The action is great. The style is great. The themes are great. It's a great film, and it's one of my all-time favorites for sure. Super rewatchable, super enjoyable. And yeah, coming in at number 3 is Kill Bill. Coming in at number 2 is Pulp Fiction. I absolutely love this film. It's really, I don't think I have anything bad to say about it at all. I don't think I have any criticisms with it. It's so fun. It's so cool. It's so funny. It's so tense. It's so enjoyable. It's incredibly written. The narrative is fantastic and structured so well. The stories are interwoven like so perfectly. The acting is phenomenal. Like every single actor sinks so perfectly into their roles. I can't even single out anyone because it's just that good. Like the dialogue that they're given to is so amazing, and they really just bring it to life in such a cool and entertaining way. It's very quotable. It's very memorable. Jules' speech at the end is incredibly written and performed. The one at the diner. It's so perfect. This is still Sam Jackson's best role for me. He is so cool. He's so enjoyable to watch. Like, he absolutely kills it. The cinematography is, of course, amazing. Everything is shot so spectacularly. The cinematography creates whatever kind of feeling the scene calls for. It can create tension. It can create humor. It can create action. Really, whatever the story calls for, the camera is like its own character telling you like how you should be feeling and telling you exactly what's going on in this film. And that's just, yeah, one thing. The characters, like I'm saying, they're so awesome and cool. Marcellus is so great to watch. He's such a big presence, and like you feel his words, like his deep voice just resonates so much. John Travolta, like I know people were like laughing at that casting when it happened because he was forgotten by that point, but Quentin Tarantino just brought him back and gave him this really cool and interesting character. And Harry Keitel is great in this as the Wolf. He's really good. Like, he knows exactly what he's about. He's very curt and he's very fast, and he's just an expert at what he does. And he's like everybody else in this movie. He's so cool. Just really, from the film does not drag for a single second. From the first scene, you're dropped into this world and you completely forget you're in like a fake constructed cinema world. It feels so real and it feels so cinematic. It's awesome. And there are a lot of good messages and morals in here too, actually. I think it's interesting that Sam Jackson and Bruce Willis, who decide to get out of all this crime and other related things, are the ones who survive. And characters like Vince or Marcellus suffer much worse fates, and I don't think that's accidental. I definitely think that's intentional, and it's a really great film from top to bottom. I really have no flaws with it. It's one of my all-time favorites for sure. Coming in at number 1, I guess you could figure out by process of elimination at this point what the number 1 movie is, but in case you haven't, it is Inglourious Basterds. I love this movie so much. It's the best Tarantino for me. Obviously, I'm putting it at number 1. It feels much more concentrated and focused than like Kill Bill and Death Proof, which come right before it. The tension in this film is just, oh my God, it's incredible. The opening scene is seriously one of the best ever. It's so incredibly well written and shot. You fear Hans Landa, and Christoph Waltz's performance is just, oh my God, it's unbelievable. It's diabolical. He is pure evil. He's a horrible person, but he scares you. He frightens you. You don't know what he's thinking or what he's doing. He owns this role. He absolutely kills it. It's one of the best performances I've ever seen in a film ever. It's so excellent, and all the performances in this movie are really excellent too. I think Brad Pitt really kills it. I think he has a tendency to just like be Brad Pitt in most movies, and it doesn't always work. But Tarantino knows exactly how to write him, and he writes him as Brad Pitt, and he uses like his cool aspects and his personality of the actual actor himself, and really makes it shine in this film. And it's done so well. The narrative here is really excellently woven, sort of like Pulp Fiction in the sense that multiple characters' perspectives and stories merge into one to form this excellent, fun, and tense narrative. The cinematography as well is really great. The score is really great. Everything's like just really excellent in this film. They really do a great job of setting the tone for whatever the moment needs, just like Pulp Fiction. I was talking about how if a moment needs to be tense, if it needs to be funny, if it needs to be violent or action-packed, the cinematography and the setting do a great job of creating that vibe. It's just so well done. One of my favorite sequences in the film, I think one of the most enjoyable, is when they break Hugo Stiglitz out of prison. They show the flashback. I love when they break right in front of his prison cell and run in, and the music's playing, and he's asking him if he wants to come pro. I think that was just a really awesome scene. It's really one of my all-time favorite films. Like, this is one of the top 10 movies that I love the most, for sure. Every scene builds on the last till an awesome conclusion, and the cut to credits moment in this is so great too. It's so enjoyable and perfect. Besides the opener, the scene with Hans Landa and Shoshana at the restaurant is also one of my favorites, as well as the scene in the tavern. Those scenes are like constructed so well, and especially the tavern scene is pretty long, but it goes by so fast. The dialogue is so engrossing, and you just feel the tension. You don't know what's going to happen next. The first time you see the film and you watch the scene with Hans Landa and Shoshana at the table, it's just like, oh my God, does he know? He orders her milk. Like, oh my God, the writing and the acting and the tension is just so good. It's a masterclass of cinema. And as good as Pulp Fiction is, as great as Pulp Fiction is, this just had to be my number one. And I love this film so much. And yeah, that's it for the ranking. I had so much fun rewatching Quentin Tarantino's films for this. I can't wait to watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood this weekend. I'm seeing a special 35mm presentation of it on Sunday. It looks so good. I'm very excited for it. I was very happy to make this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for listening. As always, follow me on Twitter @_Cinema Corner. Follow me on Letterboxd. My username is ASF5716. It's going to be a more traditional episode next week. I'll be reviewing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Maybe I'll do another underrated or a movie I've never seen before. We'll see how it goes. And I just want to say that thinking back on this episode, I think it just might be my masterpiece.